Porter's 5 Forces is a simple but powerful tool that you can use to identify the main sources of competition in your industry or sector. When you understand the forces affecting your industry, you can adjust your strategy, boost your profitability, and stay ahead of the competition. You can take fair advantage of a strong position or improve a weak one, and avoid taking wrong steps in the future. Today we will tell you everything about Porter's 5 Forces. What are Porter's 5 Forces? The tool was created by Harvard Business School professor Michael Porter. Since its publication in 1979, it has become one of the most popular and highly regarded business strategy tools. Porter recognized that organizations like to keep a close watch on their rivals, but in his Harvard Business Review article, How Competitive Forces Shape Strategy, he encouraged business leaders to look beyond the action of their competitors and examine the forces at work in their wider business environment. According to Porter, there are 5 forces that represent the key sources of competitive pressure within an industry. They are competitive rivalry, supplier power, buyer power, threat of substitution, threat of new entry. He described them further in his later article, The 5 Competitive Forces That Shape Strategy. Porter stressed that it's important not to confuse these 5 forces with more fleeting factors, such as industry growth rates and government interventions. According to Porter, those are examples of temporary factors, while the 5 forces are permanent parts of an industry structure. Let's take a look at Porter's 5 forces in more detail. 7. Competitive rivalry. The first of Porter's 5 forces looks at the number and strength of your competitors. Consider how many rivals you have, who they are, and how the quality of their product compares to yours. In an industry where rivalry is intense, companies attract customers by cutting prices aggressively and launching high-impact marketing campaigns. This can make it easy for suppliers and buyers to go elsewhere if they feel that they're not getting a good deal from you. On the other hand, where competitive rivalry is minimal and no one else is doing what you do, then you'll likely have tremendous competitor power, as well as healthy profits. Example, if you were setting up a haulage business, you'd likely be entering a crowded market. You'd have to consider many potential rivals, how much they charged, and whether they were able to discount deeply. You'd also need to think about their resources. You might be setting up to compete with international logistics companies as well as local competitors. Remember that at this point, the analysis should focus on your potential rivals. Only start thinking about your own offer when you've got your data together on the competition. 6. Supplier power. Suppliers gain power if they can increase their prices easily or reduce the quality of their product. If your suppliers are the only ones who can supply a particular service, then they have considerable supplier power. Even if you can switch suppliers, you need to consider how expensive it would be to do so. The more suppliers you have to choose from, the easier it will be to switch to a cheaper alternative. But if there are fewer suppliers and you rely heavily on them, the stronger their position and their ability to charge you more. This can impact your profitability, for example, if you're forced into expensive contracts. Example, let's say your business idea was to manufacture electronic devices. You'd have to assess your supply options for a range of specialist components. If one supplier dominated the components market, then they could raise their prices without worrying about their own competitors. This might affect the viability of your product. 5. Buyer power. If the number of buyers is low compared to the number of suppliers in an industry, then they have what's known as buyer power. This means they may find it easy to switch to new, cheaper competitors, which can ultimately drive down prices. Think about how many buyers you have. That is, people who buy products or services from you. Consider the size of their orders and how much it would cost them to switch to a rival. When you deal with only a few savvy customers, they have more power. But if you have many customers and little competition, buyer power decreases. Example, buyer power is a significant factor in food retail. Think of large supermarkets that operate in a crowded, highly competitive market. This market has changed dramatically with the arrival of cheap, no-frills food discounters. Shoppers have strong buyer power here. That's why supermarkets have coupon schemes, loyalty cards, and aggressive discounting to capture the largest share of buyers. These organizations, in turn, have strong buyer power with their own suppliers, using their influence to drive down the cost of food at the manufacturing level. Tip: judging how to price your product to attract the customers you want and to protect your brand requires great skill. Find out more in our article about Kotler's pricing strategies. 4. Threat of substitution. This refers to the likelihood of your customers finding a different way of doing what you do. It could be cheaper or better or both. The threat of substitution rises when customers find it easy to switch to another product, or when a new and desirable product enters the market unexpectedly. Example, if your organization makes medical instruments, you may find your position being threatened by the rise of 3D printing. This enables instruments to be made from a wide range of materials, sometimes at a fraction of the cost of traditional methods. If a competitor gets it right, it can weaken your position and threaten your profitability. 3. Threat of new entry. Your position can be affected by potential rivals' ability to enter your market. If it takes little money and effort to enter your market and compete effectively, or if you have little protection for your key technologies, then rivals can quickly enter your market and weaken your position. However, if you have strong and durable barriers to entry, then you can preserve a favorable position and take fair advantage of it. These barriers can include complex distribution networks, high starting capital costs, and difficulties in finding suppliers who are not already committed to competitors. Existing large organizations may be able to use economies of scale to drive their costs down and maintain competitive advantage over newcomers. If it costs customers too much to switch between one supplier and another, this can also be a significant barrier to entry. So can extensive government regulation of an industry. Example, even industries that seem well protected against new entry can prove to be vulnerable. For many years, high-volume air travel was in the hands of a relatively small number of established airlines. The barriers to entry were formidable. Startup costs were high, routes and takeoff slots were mostly grabbed by the big operators, and the industry was strictly regulated. Even so, some small operators did manage to break into the market, mostly by offering no-frills, low-cost travel to popular destinations, and taking advantage of reduced regulation. These smaller, more agile operators now hold strong positions in the industry, particularly in short to medium-haul travel. 2. How to use Porter's 5 Forces model. To start the model, start by looking at each of the 5 forces in turn, and think about how they apply in your industry. Next, write down the forces that are at play in your industry, and summarize the size and scale of each on your diagram. An easy way to do this is to use a single plus sign for a force that's moderately in your favor, or a minus sign for a force that's moderately against you. Use plus plus for a force that's strongly in your favor, or minus minus for one that's strongly against. For a neutral force, you can use O. Finally, think about how your analysis will likely impact you. Few situations are perfect. Nonetheless, analyzing your industry using Porter's 5 forces can help you to think through what you could change to improve your competitive position and increase your profitability. What's more, if you find yourself in a structurally weak position, the model can help you to think about what you can do to move into a stronger one. 1. Example of Porter's 5 forces. There are several examples of how Porter's 5 forces can be applied to various industries. The ultimate goal is to identify the opportunities and threats that could impact a business. As an example, stock analysis firm Trefis looked at how Under Armour fits into the athletic footwear and apparel industry. Competitive rivalry. Under Armour faces intense competition from Nike, Adidas, and newer players. Nike and Adidas, which have considerably larger resources at their disposal, are making a play within the performance apparel market to gain market share in this up-and-coming product category. Under Armour does not hold any fabric or process patents, hence its product portfolio could be copied in the future. Bargaining power of suppliers. A diverse supplier base limits supplier bargaining power. Under Armour's products are produced by dozens of manufacturers based in multiple countries. This provides an advantage to Under Armour by diminishing suppliers' leverage. Bargaining power of customers. Under Armour's customers include wholesale customers and end-user customers. Wholesale customers, like Dick's Sporting Goods, hold a certain degree of bargaining leverage, as they could substitute Under Armour's products with those of Under Armour's competitors to gain higher margins. The bargaining power of end-user customers is lower as Under Armour enjoys strong brand recognition. Threat of new entrants. Large capital costs are required for branding, advertising, and creating product demand, which limits the entry of newer players in the sports apparel market. However, existing companies in the sports apparel industry could enter the performance apparel market in the future. Threat of substitute products. The demand for performance apparel, sports footwear, and accessories is expected to continue to grow. Therefore, this force does not threaten Under Armour in the foreseeable future. Do let us know in the comments what your thoughts are about this analytics tool. Thanks for watching.